We're good?
Yeah, because it's a webinar, so you don't need to let people in.
All right. Good, or wait, one more minute. We have. Get started. Just by show of hands quickly, who is a PTA member? Safe and in school. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and will be posted on the GHS website. For those listening at home, you're not able to participate in the voting this evening, but you can listen in. We're trying this, so please be patient with us if it's not exact and perfect. Again, high tech, very low touch. So thank you for your patience. Before we turn the meeting over to Darby Fox, Ralph Mann and I would like to provide you with a few updates. In addition, I'll present 4 important motions requesting approval for our 329 general meeting minutes, our 22-23 PTA budget, our 22-23 board of directors and nominating committee. We want to thank you all for your generous support to the PTA this year. As a result of your support, we've been able to accomplish so many wonderful things. The money raised this year supports our students and faculty departments and house allocations, curriculum enrichment support, and it was so nice to see so many amazing field trips this spring. We were all saying as they were coming in, you know, I'd kind of like to go on that one. So it was great. School improvement provided new speakers for our GHS Cardinal Stadium. Outreach was tremendous this year, one of the highest support for students in need, and so much more. I'd like to take a special moment right now to just say thank you to my board, because I can't say enough about this group of tremendous women. Allison Honig, our secretary, Monica Wong, our assistant treasurer, Lois Kelly, our VP of distributions, Valerie Rimmer, our VP of project and service. Get it wrong every time. Program and services. I always say project. Leslie Spadone, our VP of technology, Kathy Walker, our treasurer, Anna Waters, our VP of communications, Shamisa Wilkinson, our VP of ways and means, Katie Yu, our VP of parent education, and Layla Horn, who's like my ride or die. And she's really fantastic. And I've been so fortunate not only to work with her here, but I worked with her actually at Central Middle School. And honestly, she was there at the call of everything. We do call her the mom boss. She's pretty good. And so I can't thank you all enough. Everything you all did was so instrumental in to getting everything that we had to have done. And this year was a flexibility year. We got to change, got to make some moves. And I can't thank you all enough, because it was my pleasure to be with each and every one of you. So as we look ahead to next year, the PTA continue our collaboration with GHS administration to enhance the high school experience of our students. Our GHS vestibule entryway is moving along, and we hope to be completed in the spring of 2023. This entryway will provide a secure entrance to GHS. Through the PTA beautification and school improvement, we will fund new hardscaped items like benches, tables, and chairs to complement the new entryway design. We are excited to be a part of this process. Additionally, Dana Tulata, our GHS vice principal, chairs our Student Center Reimagine Committee, and there has been great progress. Dr. Jones saw the project as worthy of support. Our project will provide a transformation of our 1970s Student Center, the hub of our school, and will affect all students in this district at one time or another. Students are actively involved with this committee and are in support of this effort. This is the time for advancement and change, building safe spaces and inviting spaces for our GHS community. Dr. Jones designated $500,000 from the ESSER 3 funding to the project. It was approved by our Board of Ed just last week. Work will begin as soon as the final RTM vote on June 13th at 8 p.m. We urge everyone to share your support or thoughts of the project with the RTM. You can go to the Town of Greenwich website and you can send it on their form center. But we would love your support of our GHS Student Center transformation project. Before I turn it over to Ralph Mayo, our principal, I would like to, this is so funny to be here, to be quite honest. Like, I'm like, this is the first meeting that I've done at a two years, so it's kind of funny. Before I turn it over to Ralph to give you through updates, I'd like to start the motion process for the approval of our March 29, 2022 minutes. As a reminder, only AP Town members who are in person are allowed to vote on the motions this evening. Those at home are unable to vote. We hope to change that into next year. I'd like to make a motion on the minutes for the March 29th, 2022 general membership meeting as presented. Do I have a second? Monica? The motion is to approve the minutes from the March 29th, 2022 general membership meeting as presented. Any discussion? Peter, don't look at me. Just joking. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any objection, please signify by saying nay. The motion has passed as presented. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Ralph Mayo. We should have like applause.
Now that Mrs. Cowley's taken all my, everything I was gonna talk about, I'm gonna think about something else.
I'm nothing but thorough.
But it's award season here at Greenwich High School, and it's a great time to be a junior or senior here because we're giving out awards left and right, and these students certainly deserve these awards after 27 months of the stuff that we've been going through. But before we get to what I have to say, the one award that I thought was really important.
The math award, those were amazing, by the way, if you didn't get to go.
PTAC S's Award, which was given to Mrs. Cowley this past year. There's nobody more deserving except for Cowley. She eats, breathes, and lives Greenwich High School. It's going to be sad to see her go.
It will be very.
But I don't think she's going anywhere.
I'm just backing it.
One of the things that Steph didn't mention, Greenwich High School over the summertime will be closed. I know you're all disappointed about that, but you'll get over it. We're going to be starting work on field number 3, which means we're going to be pulling up the carpet and taking about 1.5 to 2 feet of dirt off that field and taking it to wherever they take contaminated dirt. But I do know that anybody under 18 cannot enter this building, so please, there will be a lot of trucks going up and down Hillside for the first at least month of July. So keep trying to stay away from the building because that's what's going to be happening. But like I said, the award season is going on. Senior awards is coming up, which is my favorite, one of my favorite nights, and we will be having graduation, rain or shine, on June 23rd. If it's raining, we'll be in the pack. If it's not raining, it's a beautiful day, which I'm confident we're going to have. We'll be in Cardinal Field and having a beautiful graduation. So, never seen graduation before. We're in for a treat. We're going to graduate almost 700 students in 9 months. Quite amazing. The junior prom was successful. Senior prom is coming up on Saturday. And it's pretty much all I have. Mrs. Cowley. Since you took everything else from me. Thanks, everybody.
We're on the committees, that's why I shared. I'm just gonna do this quickly. At this time, I want to bring up Monica. You can come on in. Of course it's on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Wong. I'm the Assistant Treasurer. And first, I just want to go over our typical report, and then I'll move into the budget. Our total checking and savings balance in QuickBooks as of 5/31/22 is $237,762.63, which is comprised of $115,709.58 in checking, $122,053.05 in savings. Our year-to-date revenue was, or is $268,903, which includes membership, donations, matching gifts, a very strong Paint the Town Red event, and also about 30,000 in passive donations for the Teacher Appreciation Week gift cards. So thank you to all the parents for that. Our gross profit is $228,999. We do not expect any more revenue for the remainder of this year. Our year-to-date expenses is $155,760, but we still have some areas of expected spending in the areas of school improvement, senior scholarships, and a little bit more in curriculum enrichment and student outreach. We, as Steph said, we had a great growth in both curriculum enrichment and outreach this year. So it was so great to see the teachers run field trips, and PTA, we do help pay for pretty much all of those field trips to some degree. We will continue to look for ways in the next fiscal year to spend down our savings as we did this year in the areas of school improvement. And that makes more sense when we go onto the budget now. So there is a sheet that was out front, which is our budget for next year. I just want to highlight a few things before we vote on that. So we look forward to another successful year with our 3 fundraisers, Summer Fair, membership, and Paint the Town Red. We look for our gross profit to be just over $173,000. Our expenses should be very similar to this year, where the largest spending will continue to be on student expenditures, which we're targeting $142,000, which include curriculum enrichment, diversity week, scholarships, and ventures in education. Staff expenditures are $19,700, which includes funds for the guidance counselors, Teacher Appreciation Week, and back to school events. Parent and PTA expenses are just over $9,000 to help pay for our dues, meetings, and technology. And also school improvements is budgeted at $25,000. Our total expenditures are targeted to be just over $197,000, which results in spending down our surplus by almost $24,000. So with that, I would like to make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 proposed budget as presented. Do I second? Any? So we have a second. All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much.
Now I'd like to turn this over to Kristen Atkins, our current chair of nominating. Kristen and her team have worked really, really hard. They hit the ground running pretty quickly in March, and they have created a wonderful slate and also great committee chairs going into the next year. So thank you, Kristen, and she's going to present the slate.
So the proposed slate for the 2022-2023 executive board is as follows, and I'll ask you if you could please stand up. The presidents, Layla Horn and Peter Bernstein. Secretary Allison Honig. Treasurer Monica Long. Assistant Treasurer Maureen Harper. VP Communications Lisa Sylvester. VP Distributions Lois Kelly. VP Parent Education Min Kim. VP Programs and Services Valerie Rimmer. VP Technology Ann Park. VP VP Ways and Means, Jamisa Wilkinson. I would like to make a motion to approve the 22-23 GHS PTA Board of Directors as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion is to approve the 22-23 GHS PTA Board of Directors as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any objection, please signify by saying nay. The motion passes as presented.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. And I am going to present a motion on our nominating committee for 22-23. Vote on the 22-23 nominating committee. The names of the members are Kristen Atkins, Adrian, and I'm going to do Elizai. I do it wrong every time. Michelle Tierney and Holly Levine. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 22-23 nominating committee as presented. Do I have a second? Excellent. Thank you. The motion is to approve the 22-23 nominating committee as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any objection? Signify by saying nay. Abstentions? The motion passes as presented. Now I would like to turn it over to my co-president, Layla Horn, to introduce our speaker this evening and begin our programming.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to introduce our wonderful panelist, Darby Fox. Darby Fox is a child and adolescent family therapist with over 25 years of experience with children and families from diverse backgrounds. Darby's first book, Rethinking Your Teenager, Shifting from Conflict and Control to Structure and Nurture to Raise Accountable Young Adults, was published by Oxford University Press in 2020. An expert on parenting and family topics, she has been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, and Newsmax. So we're very, very excited to have her. And she is also a monthly contributor to Psychology Today. Darby serves as a pro bono mental health consultant on the boards of both Brunswick School and the American Red Cross and has worked with at-risk children through Horizons and the Open Door Homeless Shelter. She received a BA from Middlebury College and an MSW in Clinical Family Practice from Columbia University and has pursued specialized training in several leading institutions, including Neo's Child Study Center, NYU's Silver School of Social Work, Harvard Medical School, the Anna Freud Center, and the Ackerman Institute for the Family. Darby has 4 children of her own. Just thank you for being. I would just want to just a short, brief note for those that are here and at home. We really wanted to end the year on a positive note. I know that last year we focused a lot of our meetings. Katie, who was our education, on more sort of mental health and a lot of sort of trying to get through what was happening. We really wanted to focus on the positive. So we're very excited to learn about loving your adolescent. But I just also want to remind our parents that all of our old presentations and meetings are on our website. And for example, we had one that was called Mental Resources in the Greenwich Community. I don't remember the exact title, but it may have been from 2 years ago. But those are all on our website. So if anybody wants to look at some of our old recordings, those are all very helpful. So thank you so much. And now, Darby Fox.
Hear me? Do I need to use the microphone? Yes.
The microphone would be great for people on our Zoom. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This microphone will go for the recording.
You can scroll.
I'll be good. If I need to stroll, I will. So thank you for coming. I know it's a hard night, especially hard time of year, right after a big holiday weekend. It's 90 degrees. This is probably not where you want to be. But hopefully what I can do tonight is, and keeping in mind that we want it to be positive, I want to hopefully give you some information that you haven't had previously about adolescents from a neurological perspective and a psychological perspective, so that when we're trying to build a relationship and think about, I find most parents really want to have a positive relationship, but sometimes things get in the way. And if I can give you, first of all, I wanted to kind of break it into 3 pieces. Some background knowledge on neuroscience and the key pieces I feel there are when you are, look at myself anymore. Okay, we do have to start. It would be irresponsible to not start where we are. And then I want to go into the neuroscience, what I'm seeing today, and then hopefully give you a few suggestions of how we can overcome what seem to be really daunting statistics, because we hear it everywhere we are, and our communities in this area have been hit particularly hard as of late. So I think it's really important. It is a real health crisis. It's a real mental health crisis, obviously escalated by COVID, which you can probably all speak to. But I think it is important to see there are actual numbers here. If we look at that, 44% of teens reported persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. The big 3 things we see again, which are all familiar: anxiety, depression. Adjustment disorder just means having a hard time adjusting to something, whether it's a divorce or the canceling of sports or graduation. That's all. Adjustment disorder is not a really wild thing. If we look at this next statistic, 59% of youth with major depression never receive any treatment. So if you think about that in our community, that's why it's so hard to get away from, and I would imagine keeps escalating because it's untreated. And we've seen that, we know it exists, and it is getting worse by the increase of suicide. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but a lot is there is this sort of undercurrent, if you will, of what do we do with all the anxiety and depression, and how do we treat it? So hopefully I can give you some helpful information as parents as to how to do this more positively in conjunction with your adolescent. Okay, that's enough of the scary statistics. Okay, so can't talk about any adolescent without reiterating the brain is still developing. I love this slide. It's in most of my lectures because I think I'm a visual learner, so that's probably why, but I think it's a great way to show us what's happening. The brain is actually developing. And when you think about your 9-year-old, they think they're pretty sophisticated. We look across this board, there's still a lot of development that's still to come at 17, which is kind of 17, 18 is where we're ending here. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. The brain develops from the back to the front. Our best facilities, our executive functions, are up here in the prefrontal cortex. Our thinking, our planning, our dreaming, any executive functions, any really complex, strong feature that we have is the last to develop in the prefrontal cortex. Again, really important to keep in mind as adolescents, their job isn't just to have parents wait on them and have this great life and run around and do whatever you want. Their job is to get ready to be an adult on their own in the world. So if we keep that in mind, it is their goal is, and hopefully we as educators, mentors, parents, coaches, to help them become independent. And all of these pieces are essential. The first bad job, I would imagine most people in this room had that. Just socializing, learning how to interact one-on-one, especially in a big public school like this, where there's lots of different people, lots of different ways you have to negotiate and be able to interact. Being on time, huge, right? You don't think of that, but this is the time when these things are critical. Self-advocacy, do I call the principal or do I let my son go deal with it on their own? All those pieces are critical through this age. And we have kind of gotten away from that between COVID and technology. So really important to keep in mind, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get them to be out the door on their own. Another really central piece to keep in mind, as important as a developing brain, is children from little up into their 20s gain their intelligence differently. They build their intelligence on experience, what they see, what they feel in live terms, what they can witness. It doesn't come necessarily through the strict book learning, those things. They can read it, they can hold on to it, but to actually process and interact. This is how children build their intelligence. And we should say adolescents, because again, really important to keep in mind if we're thinking, why don't they remember things? Why aren't they thinking about it? It's because it's got to be in live terms to hold on to. Okay, so again, this is what we're doing. The overall sum: build self-esteem, self-regulation, self-efficacy. If we can help our kids do these three things, and basically the two smaller ones build into self-efficacy, then we've done a great job. And we can have a really positive relationship with our adolescents into their 20s and beyond. So self-esteem comes from not just hearing that they're good at something or that they have a lot of friends. It's from having a sense that they can interact with people and get positive response. So with that comes manners, comes those pieces of self-advocacy, being on time, being responsible, turning our papers in. All of that stuff is incredibly important for self-esteem because that's where you get positive feedback, right? Someone said, oh, your child's so polite, or oh, thank you. Really important to keep adolescents going. When we get into COVID, and then a lot goes online, and most of our social interaction is on a phone or on a screen, and we can't actually experience that in live terms, we feel like we're not quite there and we're not connected. And what does that do? That makes us feel, if we're an adolescent and we're really focused on ourselves, that makes us quickly think, what's wrong with me? I don't belong. I'm not quite getting this. So really important to notice, again, we've got to go back to getting in person, to requiring our adolescents to interact with us in real live ways to develop those relationships. Self-regulation, again, it can't all be done this way. Learning, I would imagine you saw with any child with any kind of a learning, not even a disability, just a learning challenge, was challenged through COVID. Because again, we are hardwired for live experience. So that became, it was the only thing we could do in many cases, but that's what became so hard. And again, some kids could really handle it and other kids were struggling. So what message did they get? They got the message that they weren't adequate. And as an adolescent, when they're feeling or not belonging to everything that's external, they kick back to an internal piece that says, I'm not good enough. That's where we see, or I don't know how to do it. That's where we see anxiety, depression, all of that self-doubt percolate and escalate. And that's where it came from to give us this mental health crisis we're talking about now. Self-efficacy was critical. Kids who endured COVID in a really strong manner and kind of were able to adjust quickly were people who had this core foundation. Self-efficacy is the ability to know, okay, I think I can figure it out. I don't know that I'll do the best. I don't know that I'll be the winner necessarily, but I'm pretty sure I've got what it takes to endure. Again, some of these things were lost as we've gone fast into social technology and media. Everything is being external. Okay. So then we get to the adolescents, and this is the part about relationships. Your adolescent did a podcast for an hour, just a little bit ago. Little part. Two fundamental questions an adolescent asks, not in real terms, but in their mind. One, am I loved? And two, can I have my own way? We really want the answers to be, am I loved? Yes. Can I have my own way? Not always. This, again, for you as parents, this is the key to developing good relationships with your children. If you take a minute and you can honestly find yourself somewhere in this quadrant, the far right, the upper right, high structure and high nurture is where we want to find ourselves. That's what we just said. Am I loved? Yes. Can I have my own way? No, not all the time. Again, what that helps is your kids start to develop that ability to regulate. The self-regulating is, can I handle no? What do I do when I have to readjust? Can I respect others? Do I have that ability? And as soon as they start to respect you, or they say thank you, or please, or you've done really well, then you do have some self-esteem. And it's easy to be in that area. If we look at this, and it's hard with, if we're honest, 4 kids, I know that I was at different areas of the quadrant at different times. Really helpful, I think, for us to think, what's going wrong? Why is this not working? How do I get to where I want to be? I would come back to this and say, where am I here? Like, what am I doing? With COVID again, it was hard because we felt guilty. We were losing a lot and we were all a little anxious. So it was hard to stay in that top quadrant. And a lot of people, just because of the time, the unprecedented time, dropped to this lower quadrant. High nurture. I love you to death. I feel sorry for you. I don't know what else to do. I'm going to let you push the boundaries. I'm going to let the wheels kind of come in. So again, over time and where we are now, that's not great, because then how do we pull it back together? Most importantly, the message is we didn't give the kids, if they didn't have that internal core, they don't know how to pull it back. Again, that's where we lose the ability to keep a relationship. So really important to be kind of honest, but I think this is always good to come back to in those moments when you're frustrated or whatever, you can sort of see where you are. It is also very helpful to keep in mind when you're working with your kids and you're trying to discuss other situations. You don't use these terms in exact ways, but everyone here has kids that could tell you who would fit in those different quadrants, right? Really valuable for connecting with your child and starting to develop that. This is why I say no, I love you to death, but this is what I'm aiming for. And again, we don't want to make examples of people, but I think you get what I mean. Very important to start to build that relationship with your adolescent, because once you can put it in terms they understand, like this is a person or this is an incident, that's the live experience, then they believe you. And they start to see it's coming from love. I might not have gotten what I wanted, but I get it. Actually, they do love me. That is the basis of pretty much any relationship. And can they validate me? Can I be heard? And do they understand me? Okay, so now we're getting into the other. This is a key message for parents and for adolescents. Help your adolescents with it and remind yourself of this several times a day. It's not personal. The minute we have so much vested in these relationships that it's hard not to be emotional. Anytime we're emotionally invested in something, it can quickly kick to the middle of our brain, right? Where we're working on fight, flight, freeze, anything other than our really strong cognitive abilities. And that's where we get in trouble with our adolescents. It's hard to get across our message, and they respond the exact same way because they are hardwired to be thinking about themselves and they take everything personal, right? So really important if we're building that connection with our adolescent to be able to take a step back as parents and be like, okay, she's being a jerk, but it's not personal. Someone was rude at school. She got a bad Snapchat. You know, she's got a lot of schoolwork, whatever that is. If we as parents can step back and we can actually verbalize that to our adolescents, then we've gone a long way in making that connection. Same to help your kids with. I saw lots of kids last week and one in groups. And one of the things they loved the most was when I helped them realize a lot of what they're going through, the struggles, the battles, the drama, they take it all personally and then it escalates. And they can't even see where they are or how they fit into relationships because they take it so personally. So as parents, again, we get caught up in saying, don't do this, don't do that, you have to be home here. And immediately that's kind of a buzzkill. That's where we kind of lose kids, is they have the sense, my parents don't understand me. But if we can help them in a conversation with comments like this, it's not personal, then we can go a long way, and they don't have to respond. You just have to help them with that, and then you just leave it. You don't have to work through every piece. I think as parents, we try to like explain it to them, and then we want them to respond. And so often people say, they don't say anything back, right? So we think we don't have that connection. I promise you, we don't unhear things, we don't unlearn them, but we might not have the ability to respond. So really important to keep in mind. Right. I can't emphasize enough how much this will impact your relationships with your kids at every level. This isn't I love technology. It's all around us in many ways. I'm awful with it, but I love it. This is what happens with our kids, and this is why it's so hard to connect. It changes their emotional state. All of us have seen that. I think we're even guilty if we see something we don't like, or there's a party, or who was with. Immediately, it impacts your emotional state. It impacts sleep patterns drastically. I'm very guilty of that myself, but we do know no one has great ability to hold a relationship or interact in any academic or athletic setting, musical setting, if you don't get enough sleep. And one of the latest findings we're finding with this whole mental health escalation in this age group is they're simply not getting enough sleep. They're on their phones around the clock. Attention, our brains are meant to, again, and I would say that as a woman too, we think we're supposed to multitask and that's great. And you've got your kids, you're trying to make dinner, you're talking on the phone, you're checking your phone, you're doing part of that. And all of a sudden you're thinking, I'm not making a great connection, or they're not listening to me. What's going on here? Our brains aren't great multitaskers. They can do it, but they're meant to do one thing at a time. So we start that process of shifting, and think about how annoying that is. How many people here have said, my adolescent doesn't pay attention to me? They're on their phone. Okay, I want you to notice over the next couple of days how many times you don't hear them because you're either on your phone or you're doing something else. I do remember my kids being like, did you hear me? What did I say? Well, good point, right? So really important. Self-esteem, again, I don't belong. I'm not part of that. And then the interpersonal skills. That I want to touch on just a little more here, because you're probably all thinking, we've heard this. We know phones are bad, all that stuff. But I think what is most significant, and again, this is what makes it so hard to have these relationships with your kids, is the way we were meant to biologically learn and grow to know how to interact in relationships is in live terms. Think of your babies at 2 months old. They start to kind of mock and mimic, and then they get a little older, and by 7 months, they can tell you're a stranger, but you're okay, and they start to interact in live terms that way. That's how they start to build what we call epistemic trust. That's how you start to develop this sense inside, who's okay, you're all right, you're not so good, right?
Sure, right?
So anyway, that all comes, and that's a very complicated process, but it starts right as you're born and it builds into adolescence. So by the time you're an adolescent, you can interact and have great relationships, and you can start to develop that. So that you can say who's safe, who's not. That's how you bond with people and feel that great connection. If we don't do that, and it's all being done via text or Snapchat or by watching something, we do not have the ability to develop trust. That is huge. And if you think about that for a minute, if you cannot, as a human being, really judge or develop a sense of trust of those around you, you are going to be very challenged in having good relationships with your parents, with your siblings, with intimate relationships, bosses. And that is something, that's why we don't love all the connection through phones. Not because it's bad technology or not because it's not convenient. It's because it doesn't allow us to develop the most central piece of, I would say, growing up and becoming an adult. That's how do I interact in live terms in the world? When things are good or positive, bad, all of that has to come together. And if I haven't developed that ability, I'm in trouble. It's hard to be happy. It's hard to know that I'm okay. I don't really like other people. I can't really engage. And that's where we see lots of starting to see shifting. So again, go to the next one. The other piece, and then I promise we're going to talk about more happy things, but I think if you don't know this and you're trying to make a relationship and you're not quite sure why the phone is bad, and every one of you will also have your kids say, what do you mean, put my phone down? You're on your phone, right? Like, we don't really understand what's going on. Why is this technology problematic in us learning to really develop these? We have to have an understanding of what it actually does in more scientific terms. It really impacts our happiness because of the dopamine pump here. This is the pleasure or the reward in our brains. If you see here, the normal brain is lit up like that. If I took the label off, almost no one could tell the difference between your brain on cocaine and your brain on social media. Okay, that's scary. That's super scary. That's how addictive it is. And that's what's giving us that ping. We have to keep doing it, have to keep doing it. And if you've developed that as a child and into your adolescence, and then you haven't built up this trust, this thing becomes bigger than life, if you will. Again, we are not going to be able to, as parents, break through that and develop a great relationship and a healthy connection. So again, those are the reasons why it's so problematic. Again, so this is where I want you to start. With the phones as parents, we'll get into that in a minute, but it is, you do have to be the override this technology. And you have to think about it and how it may have impacted you. What can you do with this? How can I do this? We have no choice, but we need to go back to saying, this is how you build a relationship. In our family, it's about us in real terms. Doesn't mean we have to get rid of any technology, but our main connection when we have a conversation, when I tell you you need to go to the store, or we're talking about your academics or what colleges you might be interested in, All of that needs to happen in live terms because I can read your mood, I can read all kinds of things about you, and you can see them with me, and you can sense how I feel about you. If you don't get that, how do you have this connection? Our kids need that so they know how to love and that they are loved. Really important. I mean, think about the texting. I had a man reach out to me this weekend, and he was very upset about his 10-year-old daughter. And he said, she texted me from the bedroom and told me to get her a certain kind of donut for breakfast. And he went on and he said, I told her I wanted a, and I said, well, what did you say? He said, well, I text back, I want a hug if I get you that. I was like, okay, wait, we're missing something here. He's like, why is she talking to me that way? And I said, why is your 10-year-old allowed to communicate with you in the house on a holiday weekend via phone, right? I mean, why wouldn't she just demand, I mean, it's pretty cool. I want a strawberry donut. Okay, I'll go get it, right? So if we think about that, that's the part that if you're 10 and you keep developing that, like, who is this man? He's nothing but the donut guy, right? Like, and when I'm mad at him, I'll send him a nasty text. I mean, something will come through. We've all done that, but we need to think about that because we can't help our adolescents and we can't really have close bonding relationships if we're relying on the phone in those ways. So I think that that's the first part. I want you to go back to thinking about, okay, how do we do this? That was one of the best things about COVID, is people say to this day, one of the best things about COVID is they interacted with their families.
Yes.
Right? We played games, we cooked, we argued, you know, we had to divide chores at my house, 8 people back in the house, the laundry, the going to the grocery store. I mean, all kinds of things, but think of that. It was the first time a lot of our kids that were raised in this technical world had the ability to interact in that way. And almost every single kid, a Harvard study came out, I think about in April, and it was overwhelming. It was something like 89% of adolescents reported enjoying family time for the first time. There were a million things they hated about COVID, but the family time was not one of them. In fact, it was one of the few bonuses. And if that isn't compelling enough to tell you, actually, they really do want your time and they want it in a real, live, loving, nurturing way, I don't know what else could. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll get to questions in just a second. And again, as things have gotten so complicated, all of us, again, know our kids are really striving to have a million friends, right? There is a law, it's called Dunbar's Law. I don't know who figured it out, but some mathematician and a couple scientists, and they said that your brain can only hold over here on the right about 50 people in an active way at one time that you could consider friends. Obviously, we can know more, but if you think about it through your lifespan, how people come and go, right? You've got your grade school friends, and there's only an overlap of a couple kids each time. If we look at that, that's how we felt strength. Was we counted on people we grew up with, my dad's friend, my mom's friend, your friend. That's how we knew we were solid, because we had this base to rotate in. As we've gotten into our technology world, there are amazing things about connecting. And you absolutely, if you move from town to town, you can stay connected. There's lots of fun pieces about the connection. But what happens is you start to think about, what am I going to put up to be liked? And you start to actually think these people are your friends. Again, it's so empty. What does that leave you thinking? I'm kind of a loser if I post something and I'm not hitting somewhere, honestly, north of 150, somewhere up in the 500 range. So again, you're looking at your kids, they're cranky, they don't want to talk to you, they don't want to have any interaction, and they're on their phone. Maybe they didn't get any likes, or they noticed someone had 500 likes about a party that they weren't included in, right? They weren't there. All of that, again, is building this negative static. We're not really going to change that, but what we have to do, and we can do, is be very conscious of building this circle of peers in live terms on the right. We're almost done, I promise, with that part. This was something that came out of COVID as well. What kids had never really felt before, the actual connection here, because families started developing pods. As time went on, at first we were all super careful, but then we would gravitate towards a family or two, but usually not huge groups, but we had pods. Young kids could develop relationships with parents, with friends, with coworkers. People started to go back to, this is old school, neighborhoods, groups. You could rely on things like extended family, even though it was FaceTime, so all social media is not bad, but you could see people and talk to people. Families, lots of families never talked to each other before, and extended families started to connect that way and join and converse in a way they never had before. So again, this was a positive impact of COVID, but it's something I want you to think about keeping and maintaining. And again, it does take energy, but this is what keeps your connection with your adolescents strong. You learn lots of information through the teenage years from, maybe you don't know exactly what's going on, but another parent heard from a friend or maybe a mentor that something happened, or that actually your child's not dating the person that they thought that, you thought they were dating. All this behind the scene information that is what your adolescents struggle with can come to the forefront through your network of relationships. So I encourage you to use that to keep your relationship with your adolescent live and changing all the time. They'll give a little pushback like, oh, really, do we have to go to that barbecue? But afterwards, it takes them about that long to get into it, right? And to be part of it and know how they contribute and how they interact. Again, those are all things just like traditions or relation that your kids carry on from generation. Think about all that stuff that they hold on to, and they might up front have to say it's not cool or they don't want to do it, but they carry it through into adulthood. And that's how we know it's very important to them. That answers the question, am I loved? Those are the things that say, yes, I am loved. And they know they can't have it always their way because they probably would choose to go off in a different group. But that's the grounding factor of a relationship that we as parents can do a great job of bringing into our adolescents' life. That's what keeps them mentally connected and safe and productive. Other ways to ground your family, like lots of people are like, well, how do you really do it? All of these at times of stress are super important. Go deviceless, make it a game. Whoever picks up their phone first, because we're adolescents, right? It's not like you can just take their phone. Someone's always got their phone at the table, right? First phone that's detected does the dishes or has to do the next night's dinner. Something about deviceless to encourage that. Your kids are competitive. They will immediately engage back in that and they will love to catch you doing it, right? I mean, that's how you connect with your kids, is use that piece that seems to get in the way to be a part of the situation. You'll notice every one of your kids at a time where they struggle, either with an anger or a little bit of a panic attack. We're seeing panic attacks like we've never seen before. If we can just take a moment, we as parents of adolescents always try and tell them, you're wrong, you shouldn't have done that, or I told you not to do that. And they're sitting there in a moment of thinking, yeah, they were probably right, but they're not going to admit it. And they're feeling shame. So if we can help them instead to take a minute to pull back, sit down and breathe. Okay, I get it. That was not a great choice. What else can we do? Immediately, they're on board with you. The notion that they are no longer being judged, but that they could look for a different solution with your involvement, you've got a connection. It's all about that connection of feeling safe and respected. Sleep, again, that's just in there because you're going to see it hitting almost every suggestion of what we need to do more with adolescents is get more sleep, because almost every mental health issue is impacted by sleep. Okay, and you're not going to have a good relationship with anybody who's not functioning that way. Exercise, there's pretty much no better way to connect with your kids than exercise. And I think, again, if we go back to COVID, how did it work well? You went on a walk with your kids, with the dog, or you rotated. They even offered at times. This fall, we were home and my boys were watching football and there was a break between games. And they said, let's go for a walk. I was like, looking at them like, did I just hear that? Let's go for a walk. And they were like, yeah, Mom, you want to come? I just got my stuff and I was like, this is weird. And we just walked. They're in their 20s. We went down a neighborhood, turned around and came back, and they joked, they talked. I learned all kinds of things about them. We went back in, I did my thing. They went back and watched a football game. But again, they do want this stuff. And that is connection. That's how I have this relationship with them. It wasn't a fancy thing. We didn't have to sit there and go one-on-one at a dinner table. Anything painful or forced, your adolescents, you know already will resist. These are the kind of things that they can embrace because it's not judgmental. We already did the Go device. Let's write it down. We've gone so much to putting it on phones. There's lots of struggle with, what did you say? Adolescents also are really hardwired. It gets hit about 8-to-1, the neurotransmitter that says go for it. Remember, we're trying to develop this whole, I'm trying to get into adulthood and be great. So I'm looking for novelty seeking and risk taking. And my brain is hardwired at almost an 8-to-1 ratio of the neurotransmitter called GABA that says stop. That's probably not a good idea. So when your kids say, I didn't think about it, they probably didn't think about it. Something else was drawing them. So if we can keep those things in mind and help them, we can preview, okay, what's this going to look like? What do you think you're going to do? How can I help you? They can hear you in a way they would never hear you before. If you say you need to do this or you're wrong, we're going to lose them. But if we can say, how can I help you? What can I do? What are you thinking? Best question you can ever ask. What are you thinking? And then we don't overcorrect. Worst question you can ever ask is, how was your day, as they get in the car after school? Okay, that is a conversation killer. Right? So many people say, well, I asked them how their day was. And they're just looking at you like, what? Right? So I think those are, it's not wild, great suggestions, but it is this piece of going back to who you are and staying grounded there. And what we have to remember is how much, and we do see it at times of struggle or during graduations or award ceremonies, or a sadness, like something in the community that's gone wrong, like last week in Darien, any of those, Texas, any of those pieces, you suddenly see your adolescents in a way you never saw them before. They really do love you, and they really do count on you, and they want your opinion. They just want to not be judged for what they can't do or what they want to do. And we can help them with all of that, and that builds that relationship if we can take enough time to pull back, not let it be personal, and take that time to be curious about where they are. So I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to leave it at that. But I think if you take nothing else away, it's not personal, and be curious.
Yeah, that was wonderful. That was
If
great.
anybody's got questions, I don't know, do we have time? Whatever your time is.
Yeah, time.
Do we have the ability to see on the webinar or,
No, they're
Okay.
muted.
okay, can we just kind of take one at a time or?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't want to sound facetious when I say, don't ask, how was your day? But frequently our days are pretty routine. They're pretty much the same. Like, what are they going to tell you? Math was hard, or, they didn't do their English homework. They're not going to say anything like that, but you can ask about, usually there's things in the community. Again, I hesitate to bring it up, but Texas, great question. Did they address that in school? Did your teachers talk about that? Anything like that, you can ask. Usually there's a party that went on over a long weekend, something like that. You'll be like, did you hear these kids got in trouble? Or were you there? Or do you know anybody that went? And suddenly they might not give you the real information, but they'll be like, yeah, I knew about it, but I didn't go, or whatever. It starts a conversation, and you do know everything they tell you is not going to be exactly as it was, but you don't really care about that. You're getting across the idea, I care about what happens in your life. And by the way, I know a little more about it than you think I do, right? And that gets them to be at least understanding you're along their same page. Does that help?
Question about the brain development.
Yeah.
Do you see any differences, or are there differences between male, female, and kind of what ages that progresses?
That's a great question. And yes, there are differences, and we do know that girls develop a little more quickly, and that comes with menses and all of that. But there's also a difference, and they're just starting to see it. If I could go back to school, I'd be a neuroscientist, because we're learning so much about the brain that we didn't know before, because we couldn't see in the brain. But there are differences, and the emotional part of the brain, sort of mid part, I can't quite get there, but the mid part inside is impacted differently. And we do notice that girls receive rejection as pain more often than adolescent boys. Adolescent boys do, but girls seem to be more impacted by it than men. And that does go again with the neurotransmitters that, if you have sex, the girls, the oxytocin, they're getting different messages. And that again is a biological factor in what our purposes initially were, to breed. So that's a very good question, and really important to know that they might feel it more strongly or deeply. Negative emotions are known to be way more powerful for any adolescent developing brain than positive. And they say that the positive has to be close to, I think the number is 100 to 1. I don't know how they know it's 100 to 1, but it's a significant factor of more positives to one negative to tip that balance. And girls are particularly susceptible because of the neurotransmitters. Great question.
Darby, I have a question. So really interesting to hear about with the phones and technology. So I'm always curious about what people say about phones, not just the use of them, but also what type of phones, because I'm assuming that the research is looking at an iPhone. But in your experience, have you heard anything about, other types of phones and or any other suggestions? Because I have high school, middle school. I'm curious about what options there are to sort of curtail that, especially at the early ages.
At the early ages, there is,
Flip phone.
yeah, the flip phone.
They'll have a good time with that.
You can't find them anymore.
The old 3 phone numbers. choose carefully.
The one with the antenna that you have to pull out.
Yes.
How about the bag phone? They'd never carry it anywhere.
Oh, I remember that big thing you lugged around, but no, that's a great question. And yes, there is a difference. If you don't have a smartphone that connects you to all the different things, that's definitely easier. But we still have to, the texting is, and this is my information, it's not someone else's, this is just my opinion. But I'm in this space all the time, is that texting is equally as bad as all the other stuff, because we do have a little bit of ability as we get older to say, well, that was on social media, or they used a filter, or we can negate it a little bit. But what I don't like about text is the 10-year-old girl, like, she's not on social media, it's not a smartphone. But again, we don't have to be accountable in a way that we would if we had eye-to-eye contact. And there's a kind of silly movie that came out a couple of years ago. It's like a really cute rom-com, and I can't remember the name. I saw it in an airplane, but it had the best line I've ever seen. If it's not eye-to-eye, it doesn't count. And I think that that is the best thing for you to go back to in important things. It's okay to say, I'll pick you up, or what do you want for dinner? At young age through the phone, it is helpful in that sense. Do not, as parents, argue over the phone, over text. Please don't. It's an equalizer. Everybody's the same. So if you think about having a relationship, a positive relationship with an adolescent, that one, they haven't experienced the same things. They're more volatile emotionally. And then you're going back and forth with the texting, right? And then you've got these long paragraphs or whatever, but you misspelled a word or it got changed. Everything's different. There's no punctuation. The whole conversation takes on a different tone, right? I've got lots of stuff coming in on my phones all the time, a couple different emails. And a lot of times I don't really have time to respond. I'll send back yes, no. And people, you might have gotten some of those where you're like, is she mad at me? I'm not remotely mad. I just don't have time to. And I call people a lot when I'm driving from place to place. Everyone says, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. This will take me a couple seconds and I'm driving. I just hit the button on my car, right? So I think that it is really important. I don't think kids need phones until there could be a family. My kids hated, I had the family phone. And that was just so humiliating. Obviously your kids are younger and we've come a little bit further, but still young kids, if you can't keep track of your sweatshirt, I don't know why you're getting a big phone, right? And I really would approach it that way. I think young kids don't need phones. And again, we're teaching them how to interact. And that, if that is not reason enough to keep it from them, I don't know what is. It's hard, but more and more people are doing it. And, we just do it, or have them put the phones down when they get home. You can check it after you have a snack, do your homework, you can check it again, or whatever it is. And please don't let them have until they're old enough to manage themselves, which is high school. But if your kid's got bad grades, can't make anywhere on time, is just a mess, doesn't turn in their homework, why would you let them have their devices in their room at night? Right. They're saying, I need help, I can't manage myself. And it doesn't need to be punitive. I'm not mad at you. It's just, this isn't working. And that is our job as parents.
I actually have a quick question, sort of segue into this. So my kids are a little bit older. I have
Yes.
one who's two actually are technically adults, but I think the whole
I
texting.
love that technically.
Well, because like they aren't, but I think my biggest frustration is they think the phone is just like, right away you have to answer me, right away you have to resolve everything, right? And
Yeah.
like, how, and so I'm always like, you guys, when we were growing up, we had to be home to answer the phone, to talk, like, how do we like roll that back a little bit? Like, especially with older kids who just don't understand like that the world doesn't have to move at such a fast pace. Like, it's very hard, I think, as a parent to be like, I can't answer it now, and they're like, why? So how do we,
So, yeah.
like, I mean, how do we create that boundary without creating conflict, I think.
So I think you have to just be really clear with them that I can't answer in the moment. And I'm not gonna answer in the moment. We can do it at the end of the day or whatever, but I can't get there. And as young adults, hopefully as they get into their job, I have a daughter who's a resident in medical school, and a lot of her friends have gotten mad at her because she doesn't respond. She's like, I can't be on my phone. A lot of kids that are working in finance, they cannot be on their phone. They can't have their phone out on a
Right.
floor. So I think it is up to us to just say, look, I'm not responding in the moment. A lot of clients do that. I give adolescents my cell number, and if it's in an off hour, I will respond to them because I want them to know someone can help them.
Right.
But you get parents at 11 p.m., whatever, just throwing out a casual text, and immediately I'll get a phone call. You didn't answer my text. It's like, it's 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. So I think it's up to us to just set those boundaries and say, hey guys, I am not going to respond all the time. If you'd like to reach me or you need a response, call me.
Right.
Okay, and you really, and we kind of have to do it. We get stuff and we kind of panic for a minute. We all do it. But the best thing is that stepping back.
And also maybe like you said, I say we can talk
Yeah.
about it when we're eye to eye.
Yeah.
Gently nudge them to have more interaction, face to face instead of just text. So you don't want to give them a message like, you're a loser,
Yeah.
but you're home all weekend, call one of the girls in your team, or something like that. How do you navigate that so they don't feel, like they don't have the courage to.
It's hard, right?
be the
Because,
first one to call, and
yeah,
how do you sort of help them do that?
I think what you do is you help them send out the text. I see lots of kids that have that anxiety about, oh, I can't send the text. I can't be the first one. And even college kids. A girl sat in my office the other day until her challenge was to then send a text to the group. Does anybody want to go to dinner tonight? Right? And it was very difficult for her, that sense of rejection. But help them do it. And then bring it into live contact and say, okay, guys, I'm getting pizza for you. And the deal is no phones during pizza. Like, you guys can go off and do your thing after you eat, but, and start to get them used to that. And it is, you do need to help kids with that anxiety and say, okay, let's sit down. Can we send this text? Really important there to preview what's the worst that could happen. And it is no one will respond. Usually that's their biggest fear, is no one will respond. And then you can kind of help them. Okay, maybe she's at lacrosse. These guys are with their dad this weekend. So again, really important that we help them preview. It's okay if no one responds, you can handle it. And that's where they get hung up, is what will I do if I don't get the right response? And that paralyzes us.
Darby, anything you would say about the dopamine and obviously all of the technology? So would any vitamins of any kind help a child that kind of balance that a little bit?
So that's a great question. I don't know that I would say there's a certain vitamin with the dopamine, but there is huge research, and again, in a couple years, I wonder what they'll say. Kids that show anxiety and depression at high levels are very low on B6, B12, and vitamin D. Also, any sort of attentional issues, any ADHs, ADDs, processing, those vitamins are very low because they help equalize, and magnesium. Again, I wouldn't want to get, there's not clinically, there are, the doses are a little different, but again, magnesium is something that's very calming. It creates all kinds of sort of balancing things in the brain. So there is a lot to that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? No?
Okay.
Well, we just wanted to say thank you, first of all.
Thank you very much.
Our business is pretty much over. We just wanted to say thank you, of course, to Darby Fox for that really, really incredible presentation tonight. And I think the eye to eye, even though there's not a huge group here, I think me personally, for the first time, and I don't know how long, I actually sat through a PTA meeting and focused only on the PTA meeting. I know that everybody at home on Zoom is like doing 100 things, but I think it was good for all of us, right? It was a good exercise in eye to eye. And thank you to all of you for coming out tonight, and we'll see you this summer, or we'll see you in the next few weeks, hopefully. And this is our last PTA meeting of the year, so we'll see you at the first PTA meeting in the fall. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Everybody.
Oh, I'm still working, yeah, we're working on that, but it's about, connection.
Should we,
Leave the webinar.
Yeah, there's a fair amount on.
Do what?
Yeah.